Rawteur. You ever sit down, flip on a streaming app, and see that message, #1 show in the US today, and you're like, wait, who's watching this? Because it's not me, and it's not anyone that I know. Now, I had always suspected that the ratings weren't real, but I had no idea just how deep the facade went, that is, until last year. See, last year I posted in the sci-fi subreddit because Amazon was showing this random Cuba Gooding Jr. B movie as the #1 movie in the US. Now, I'm talking about this is a full-on bargain bin type of movie, straight up B, even C-level movie. Nobody I knew had seen it, Reddit hadn't seen it. There wasn't a single conversation happening about this movie anywhere. And yet, there it was. #1. Now, I typically don't show graphics in my videos anymore, but I'm going to show it to you here as proof, and it should still be in the thumbnail unless I changed it. And you've probably experienced something similar when you see a trailer with one of those Rotten Tomato badges that say 100% certified fresh, then you watch it, and about 18 minutes in, you're seriously wondering if you clicked on the wrong movie. And no, you're not imagining it. Something's off. Somehow, over the last few years, we've landed in this weird moment where success in entertainment doesn't feel real anymore. Because the truth is, most of what we're told about what's a hit, what's a flop, what's a must-watch, it's not actually about what people love. It's about what studios, platforms, and critics need you to believe is successful. And that illusion, that performance of success, it didn't start with streaming. It goes way back, decades back to when television success was measured by a system that basically asked a few thousand strangers to speak for the entire country. That system was called Nielsen. Now, Nielsen is still around, but in its original inception, Nielsen was supposed to be the scoreboard, the thing that told networks what people were watching, what was hot, what needed to be canceled, but how it actually worked was kind of insane when you break it down. Don't forget to clap the like button. They picked a few thousand households, just a sample, and installed little boxes on their TVs to track what they watched. That was it. A tiny fraction of viewers used to represent the entire US population. And from that small pool of families, they built the entire rating that determined which shows lived or died. A handful of people decided the fate of entire series. Think about how absurd that is now. A show could be beloved in a certain region or among a younger demographic or within a specific online community, but if that group, that small group that Nielsen put those boxes on, wasn't represented in Nielsen's sample, it didn't count. It was invisible. And yet, those numbers shaped careers, built empires, and killed shows before they had a chance to grow. It was all based on the assumption that this little slice of America could speak for everyone. Even though everyone in the industry knew how flawed it was, they still used it because it gave them something to point to, a way to sell certainty to advertisers. Money, obviously. That need for a scoreboard, even a broken one, was more powerful than the truth. And then streaming came. Streaming shattered all of that. No more appointment viewing, no more one-size-fits-all programming blocks. Suddenly, people could watch what they wanted, when they wanted. Entire seasons dropped at once, just content on demand 24/7. You'd think that would come with better data, smarter insights, and more accurate ways to measure what people actually watch. But no, instead, the scoreboard just disappeared completely. Netflix doesn't use Nielsen. Neither does Amazon nor Paramount, despite them recently saying or suggesting, according to Paramount, that South Park had 5.2 million views. But who's to say, right? They don't follow any industry standard. They make up their own definition of success. One week it's hours watched, the next it's total accounts that watched at least 2 minutes. The next it's whatever makes the headline sound impressive. There's no transparency. No third parties have access to their viewing data. There is no way to verify anything. They could say a show had 50 million views in its first week, and you can't prove they're wrong. And you also can't prove what they're not telling you. The show that bombed, that no one finished, the one that quietly got buried under the algorithm rug, just disappeared. And it's not just Netflix. Every streaming platform does this. They all control the narrative. They release only what benefits them. And they do it knowing most people won't ask questions because the headline already did its job. Now, let me ask you, how many of you who saw the South Park headline about that, the season, what is it, 27 episode with Trump, how many of you actually thought for a second, is this true? Most people just accepted it for what it was, right? Because now it's not just that the scoreboard is broken. It's that the people running the game are the only ones keeping score. Even after streaming took over your television, people still talk about Nielsen ratings like they're the gold standard. But what if I told you that entire system was never all that accurate to begin with? You'll hear headlines like most streamed show of the week according to Nielsen, and it sounds official, like the truth. But that trust, it was built on an illusion from the very beginning. Nielsen started back in the 1950s when there were only 3 major networks and your TV had like 5 or so channels if you were lucky. Back then, measuring a few thousand families across the US kind of worked. It was a simpler ecosystem, fewer shows, less fragmentation. But even then, it wasn't great. See, the core idea was track a statistically representative sample, then use that to project what the whole country's watching. Except it never really was representative, especially not as the country changed. I mean, demographics shifted, taste diversified, and TV exploded into hundreds of channels, then thousands of shows, then on-demand everything. Meanwhile, Nielsen's box count stayed basically the same. Still a small sample, still locked into this outdated idea that a few families in Iowa and New Jersey could tell you what 330 million people were watching. And even the way they defined watching was bizarre. Like, if the TV was on and tuned to the right channel, that counted, even if nobody was in the room. They didn't know if you were engaged, if you finished the episode, or if you changed the channel 5 minutes in. The data was blind to intent. It just knew the TV was on. Advertisers, however, didn't care. They were sold on eyeballs or the illusion of them. If a network said 20 million viewers tuned in, it didn't matter if 5 million were in the kitchen making popcorn. The number was big. It sounded good, and that was enough to keep the money flowing. And networks, they figured out how to play the game. They'd scheduled their best episodes during sweeps week, the periods when Nielsen would collect the most data for advertisers. They'd tweak storylines, introduce cliffhangers, even bring in celebrity cameos, all to spike the numbers when it counted most. Not because it made sense for the story, but because it made sense for the spreadsheet. Some shows even lived or died based on sweeps week alone. Just a few strategically placed episodes and a prayer that the right households were watching. That's how fragile the system was and how easy it was to game. I went into this a bit more in depth in my TV shows are worse now video, so you can check that out. Now, when DVRs came along, Nielsen lagged behind. When people started watching shows online, Nielsen again lagged behind. And when binge watching on platforms like Netflix became the new normal, the same story. Nielsen lagged behind. They tried to adapt. They added Live Plus 3 and Live Plus 7 to track people who watch later. They tried partnering with streamers to get more data, but it was always reactive and always behind. And through all of it, the media kept treating those numbers like gospel because there was nothing else. It was the only scoreboard we had, even though it was measuring the wrong things in the wrong way for the wrong reasons, quite frankly. But it gets even stranger. When networks and platforms stop relying on Nielsen behind the scenes, they still use the language of ratings in public because it sounded official. It made content feel important. If you could slap top rated or most watched onto your promo poster, people paid attention. It didn't matter if the numbers came from a flawed box in a stranger's living room. It didn't matter if they came from nowhere at all. It mattered that they looked real. So now we're in this moment where the data either doesn't exist or it's being carefully selected, packaged, and sold to us as proof. And because we've been trained for decades to trust a number on screen, most of us don't stop to ask where it came from. And when that blind trust became the default, when even bad data felt better than no data, it created that perfect vacuum, the one that streaming platforms were more than happy to fill. Because now they don't just influence the narrative of success, they own it completely. The numbers you see, the top 10 list, is not just content, it's strategy. Because now the platforms don't just report the stats, they control them. See, Netflix didn't just replace the scoreboard you relied on. They burned the old one down, built their own, and hung it in Times Square with fireworks around it. Every time a new show drops, there it is. #1 in the US, top 10 worldwide, most watched series of all time. And people eat it up because we're wired to respond to that. If it's a hit, we assume it must be good. If everyone's watching it, we don't want to miss out. FOMO has replaced curiosity. Perception has replaced judgment. But here's what nobody tells you. Netflix decides what those numbers mean, and they change the definition whenever it suits them. There's no consistency or oversight, just Netflix announcing its own greatness and everyone else nodding along like it's been confirmed by science. And they're not alone. Disney Plus does it, HBO Max does it, Amazon Prime does it, as I proved at the start. They all have their own internal systems with their own top 10 charts, and not a single one of them is independently verified. The only data we get is what they choose to release. The hits get the headlines, the flops get quietly removed from the front page. You assume it was your fault for missing it, but really, it just didn't do what they needed it to do, so they quietly walked it away. I mean, I can personally think of Black Summer. If you were a fan of Z Nation and you were a fan of Black Summer, where is Black Summer? Somebody asked the Asylum. Somebody asked Netflix. What's the deal with Black Summer? That's what makes this moment so confusing. You can't tell what people are actually watching anymore, just what platforms want you to think people are watching. And if you're a creator trying to break into that space, I mean, good luck, because now you're not just competing with other shows, you're competing with the algorithm's mood that day. And if it buries your work under 5 layers of trending nonsense, no one even knows it exists. The scoreboard is rigged and part of a branding strategy. See, so it's not that everything is doing well, it's just that no one's allowed to say otherwise, which brings us to the other half of the illusion. Because even if we could see the numbers, even if we did know exactly how many people were watching something, what happens when the reviews are just as manipulated? Think about it. You ever read a review or watch one on YouTube and think, are we even talking about the same movie? Because a lot of the reviews we see now are just as manipulated as the numbers. Traditional critics, the newspaper, magazines, and trade outlet crowd used to carry real weight. Most of us remember when Siskel and Ebert, and later Ebert and Roper, were basically household names, back when a single line in the New York Times could make or break a movie's opening weekend. But now, a lot of them are just playing defense. Studios control the access. You give them a bad review, and suddenly you're off the list for the next premiere. No advanced screening invites or interviews. No press kit. You're out of the loop. And in this space, being out of the loop is death. So instead, the reviews get softer, more polite, carefully worded. You'll see a lot of phrases like ambitious misfire or visually impressive if emotionally uneven, which is critic speak for, this was garbage, but please don't blacklist me. And the review aggregators, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, people still treat them like truth meters, but Look closer. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't even tell you how good something is. It just tells you what percentage of critics gave it a positive review. What's more accurate, I would say, would be the popcorn score, which is the audience score. But I digress, because what the critic reviews actually means is that a movie with mostly meh, middle of the road, can still come out looking like a masterpiece. A film with 100 reviews all saying it's fine, I guess, will still show up as 100% fresh. And don't even get me started on the early reviews, the ones that hit before the movie comes out. Most of those are from carefully selected outlets, the ones who play nice, who post embargo-safe praise, who won't rock the boat. It's marketing in disguise. Front-loaded positivity meant to flood the feed before any real backlash can build. Then come the influencers. And look, not all influencers are dishonest, but let's be real. A lot of people on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter are chasing that early access pipeline. They want to be first. They want the screeners. They want the invite to that Disney Plus junket in LA with the free hotel, free merch, and the photo ops with the cast, the yada, 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 right? You think they're going to roast the movie after all that? Some will, most won't, because the moment they go negative, the invites stop coming. And it's not just about perks, it's about momentum. See, you build a channel off of Marvel content, and then you suddenly say, yeah, this one was mid. You just alienated your entire audience. So you soften the take, you hedge. You say things like, it wasn't my favorite, but I totally get why some people love it. That way, you don't lose your access or your fan base. Even among indie YouTubers, you'll see the same pattern. Fear of backlash, fear of comment wars, fear of stepping on the wrong franchise. So people stick to the safe opinions or just don't cover the stuff they didn't like at all. Or in some cases, they only cover the things that they don't like and build a community around hate. I mean, it's exhausting. See, we used to think that the audience had all the power, that social media made things more honest, that now anyone could speak the truth and be heard. But over time, the incentives changed. Now honesty gets punished, bland positivity gets rewarded, and the people who call it like they see it, they get buried by the algorithm, flooded with hate, or quietly cut off from the press list. So what does that leave us with? View counts we can't verify, reviewers we can't trust, critics who can't speak freely, influencers who don't want to rock the boat, which means the hype, all of it, is coming from inside the house. So when a movie drops and everyone's saying it's amazing, that might be true, or it might just be the only opinion that's allowed to exist. When you see a movie trending online, it's easy to think the buzz is organic, but most of the time, that hype was manufactured weeks ago by design. Because these days, buzz isn't something that happens naturally. It's planned, scripted, and launched in phases. Studios don't just hope something goes viral. They design it to. It starts before the movie's even out. You'll see some carefully timed leaks. There will be leaked set photos, rumors about certain cameos, a cryptic tweet from a cast member, all of it designed to kickstart speculation, because speculation means free publicity. Then the fan accounts kick in, the ones with usernames like Film News Daily or MCU Updates. Now you have to think to yourself, are these fans? Maybe, but a lot of them are just marketing arms in disguise. Posting teaser clips, hyping casting announcements, driving the entire narrative before the studio even releases a trailer. And when the trailer finally does drop, that's when the reaction economy takes over. Suddenly, your feed is flooded with trailer reaction videos of people screaming at their screens and losing their minds at half a second of a reveal. And look, some of that is real, but some of it, let's just say, there's a real reason why a lot of reaction thumbnails all start to look the same. It's not about how you felt watching it. It's about how excited you looked while watching it. And then come the early screenings, the ones packed with hand-picked superfans, influencers, and reviewers who've already been groomed to love the product. These screenings are loud, there's applause, gasps, all of which are recorded, of course. And then the studio turns that into another trailer, one of those audience reaction cuts where you don't see the movie, just the faces of people in night vision having the time of their lives. You're not watching them watch the movie, you're watching a mood board. And it works. You see people crying in the theater or terrified, and suddenly you're like, wait, am I missing out? Is this the next big thing? You haven't seen the movie yet, but you've already been told how to feel about it. Even when a film underperforms, there's a playbook. Suddenly, the headline shifts to, despite low box office, it's a massive hit on streaming, or divisive at first, but gaining a cult following. The goal is never to admit failure. The goal is to keep the conversation alive long enough for the narrative to flip. And sometimes they don't even wait for a flip. They force it. Have you ever seen a movie go viral for one very specific moment? A dance scene, a fight, a memeable line, an accident, a blooper. Studios push those. They pre-clip them, give them to influencers, and quietly seed them through TikTok and Twitter. Then the algorithm takes over. People see the same clip 5 times in a day and assume it's everywhere. That's not virality, that's choreography. It's controlled chaos, but just enough noise to make it feel spontaneous, but never enough to risk the wrong kind of attention. And while all this is happening, the stuff that actually flops quietly exits stage left. Maybe you catch it in the recently added tab, maybe not. The system doesn't leave room for honest failure. It's all either record-breaking success or radio silence, which puts us, the audience, in a weird spot. We don't just have to decide what we like, we have to figure out what's real, what's earned, and what's hype, what's planted, what's legit buzz, and what's a distraction wrapped in a TikTok trend. Because right now, perception is being micromanaged from every angle. The data, the reviews, the reactions, even the vibes. It's a carefully staged illusion of popularity, and unless you're paying attention, it's easy to get swept up in it. But not everything is a lie. There are still ways to get closer to the truth. You just have to know where to look. With all the fake ratings, sketchy reviews, and made-up milestones, what are you supposed to trust? If you've ever asked that question, there's one old-school system that might still be worth paying attention to. And no, it's not Rotten Tomatoes. And as much as I want to say YouTubers, even that gets complicated depending on who's talking and why. But there's one source, just one, that still carries some weight. It's not flashy, it doesn't go viral, I don't even think it has a top 10 chart. It's called Cinema Scores. And here's why it matters. Cinema Scores started back in 1979, and its system is refreshingly simple. They ask real audiences what they thought right after seeing a movie on opening night. That's it. The key is that they're not polling critics, not polling influencers, and it's not algorithm farm tweets. It's just normal people who bought a ticket and sat through the whole thing. They hand out physical ballots at the theater, people grade the movie A through F, and the results are tallied from there. There's no PR fluff, just a straight up gut check from the audience that actually showed up, paid for a ticket, and watched the thing all the way through. The thing is, though, audiences are usually generous. They want to like what they just watched. So when a movie gets an A, it usually means they enjoyed it. When it gets an A+, that's rare. That's a big deal. But when you see a movie get a B- or a C, that's rough. Because in cinema score terms, a C isn't meh. It's bad. It means people walked out confused, disappointed, or straight up mad. So while critics might call something divisive or bold, if a cinema score audience gives it a D, the story changes. That score's not coming from corporate spin. It's not the result of social media pressure. It's the purest kind of feedback. The sound of a paying audience saying, nah, that wasn't it. And studios pay attention to it. Quietly, but seriously, because cinema score affects word of mouth. And in the long run, that's still the most powerful force in entertainment. Word of mouth doesn't trend on Twitter. It doesn't show up in the Netflix top 10, but it decides which movies survive and which ones vanish. That's the thing we've forgotten. Success used to spread person to person, friend to friend. Somebody saw a movie, told 5 people, those people told 5 more. It was slower, but it was honest. Now, the machine tries to beat you to that conversation. It floods your feed before you've even had a chance to form an opinion. It tells you what's great, what's important, whether it is or not. And the longer you're in it, the harder it is to tell the difference between real praise and manufactured enthusiasm. But don't fret, because the truth still finds a way to break through. In the conversations you have after the hype dies down. It's in the stuff that holds up after the dust settles. It's in the reactions that aren't choreographed. That's why things like Cinema Score matter. That's why small reviewers, the unfiltered opinions, and yes, even that one brutally honest YouTuber with 10K subs or, 1,700. How many do I have now? Yes. 1,700 like myself. That's why we matter. Because at some point, the marketing fades, the campaigns end, and the top 10 resets. And what's left? The work. The actual movie, the show, the art, whatever's underneath all that hype. That's the part that either connects or it doesn't. Everything else is just noise. So yeah, maybe we don't have a perfect scoreboard anymore, but if we pay attention, if we stop outsourcing our opinions to charts, algorithms, and tomato emojis, we might still find the stuff that's actually worth watching. You just have to be willing to see through the illusion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and for more videos like this one, check out this video right here.